I work in an insurance claims office. Not the most glamorous job in the world, but it's stable and honestly, the work isn't bad once you get into a rhythm. Most of my day is spent reviewing claims, cross-checking documents, and making sure the numbers line up. It's not rocket science, but it requires focus and a decent work ethic. If you slack off, it shows pretty quickly. The office itself is a mix of personalities. Some people are diligent, some are just there to collect a paycheck, and a few are somewhere in between. For the most part, I get along with everyone. Or at least I did, until Jordan came along. Jordan was hired about a year after me. On his first day, he walked in wearing an expensive-looking watch, loafers with no socks, and an attitude that screamed, "I'm too good to be here." He shook hands with everyone, cracked a few jokes, and immediately made it known that this job was just temporary until he found something more in line with his talents. That should have been my first red flag. At first, Jordan seemed friendly enough. He chatted with people, made himself comfortable, and always had a funny story to tell. But when it came to the actual work, the guy was useless. He'd spend half the day scrolling on his phone, the other half wandering from cubicle to cubicle distracting people with small talk. If he did touch a claim file, he rushed through it and made mistakes that the rest of us had to fix later. The worst part was that he was slick about it. If a mistake got flagged, he always had an excuse. "Oh, I thought account was handling that," or "Didn't you say you were double-checking those files?" He spread the blame so well that management never seemed to hold him accountable. Guess who ended up picking up the slack? Yep, me. Because I sat closest to him, Jordan made a habit of sliding his unfinished work my way. He'd stroll over with a sheepish grin and say, "Hey, you're way faster at this than I am. Could you just take care of this one real quick?" At first, I didn't think much of it. Everyone helps out a coworker now and then. But it didn't stop. Within weeks, I realized I was doing almost double the workload, my claims and half of his. One day, I decided to time him. I kept track of how many claims I processed in an hour versus how many he did. I completed 12. He did 2, and one of his had errors so bad that I had to redo it from scratch. I wasn't the only one who noticed, either. A couple of coworkers complained quietly about Jordan's laziness, but no one wanted to make it official. People were worried about rocking the boat. Our supervisor, Marcy, was a nice woman but not exactly known for dealing with conflict. She had a tendency to brush things under the rug. So Jordan kept coasting. It got worse when the company announced an upcoming round of raises and potential promotions. Suddenly, Jordan was everywhere. He started showing up early, staying late, and talking loudly about how dedicated he was. But here's the kicker, he wasn't actually working more. He just made sure his desk light was on while he wandered around chatting up managers or hanging out in the break room. He even started taking credit for other people's finished claims, casually slipping we into conversations about projects he never touched. That's when I decided enough was enough. If Jordan wanted to dump his work on me, fine. I'd let him dig his own grave. But I wasn't going to let him use my effort to climb the ladder. So I started keeping records. Every time Jordan dropped a file on my desk, I made a note of it, time, date, and file number. Every time I fixed one of his mistakes, I saved the corrected version in a separate folder with both our initials on it. I even started BCCing myself on email chains where he tried to push tasks my way. Meanwhile, I played along. Whenever he said, "Hey, can you handle this one for me?" I'd smile and say, "Sure thing." Outwardly, I looked like the helpful coworker. Inwardly, I was building a paper trail. Things came to a head during quarterly performance reviews. Marcy scheduled one-on-one meetings with each of us to go over our productivity numbers. Jordan strutted into his review looking smug as hell. I don't know exactly what he said in there, but I do know that afterward, he walked out grinning and told me, "Might want to step up your game. I think management's starting to notice who's really pulling weight around here." That was the final straw. When it was my turn for the review, Marcy pulled out a sheet showing my productivity stats. They were solid, well above average. But she frowned and said, I have heard some concerns that you might be taking on more than you can handle. Jordan mentioned that he's had to cover some of your workload recently. I almost laughed out loud. The audacity of this guy. Not only was I doing his work, he was now flipping it around to make it look like I was the one slacking. So I pulled out my folder. I showed Marcy the logs of every file Jordan had given me. I pulled up the emails. I showed her the side-by-side copies of his error-riddled claims and my corrected versions. I laid it all out, piece by piece, until there was no doubt who had been carrying who. Marcy sat there in stunned silence for a long moment. Finally, she said, I had no idea this was going on. She thanked me for bringing it to her attention and asked me to send her digital copies of everything. I did gladly. The fallout wasn't immediate, but over the next couple of weeks, I noticed a change. Jordan suddenly had a lot more work on his desk. Marcy started checking in on him directly, asking pointed questions about his claims. He couldn't dump files on me anymore, without her noticing. And without someone covering for him, his numbers tanked. The final nail in the coffin came during a big department meeting. Marcy presented productivity charts for each team member. Mine showed steady growth and accuracy. Jordan's looked like a cliff dive. Everyone in the room saw it. A month later, Jordan was gone, pursuing other opportunities, according to HR, which, let's be real, means he either quit before they could fire him or he got pushed out quietly. The best part? When raises were announced, I got one of the highest bumps in the department. Marcy even thanked me privately for keeping things afloat and hinted that a leadership position might be in my future. As for Jordan, I heard through the grapevine that he tried the same shtick at another company in town and didn't last long there either. Some people never learn. Looking back, I'm glad I didn't blow up at him earlier or refuse to help. By playing along and keeping records, I let him bury himself. All I had to do was hand management the shovel. The moral of the story? If a co-worker keeps dumping their work on you, don't just suffer in silence. Document everything. Keep receipts. Because eventually the truth comes out, and when it does, people like Jordan don't stand a chance. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed, please leave a like, subscribe, and enable notifications.